For those of you that enjoy turmoil and turnover, what's going on in the college football coaching ranks is your fucking Thanksgiving Day. Yet the crazy thing is, we're not even into the turkey and stuffing, mashed potatoes and green bean casserole version of this meal. We're in the fucking salad and the breadsticks and the bread rolls and the appetizer portion of this feast. We're just getting started. Wait till the season ends. That's when shit really hits the fan. When schools decide, you know what, this coach isn't meeting our expectations. They've underachieved, or shit deteriorated so fast that we're moving on. Or coaches decide, fuck it, we're out of here. This isn't worth it, we resign. Maybe under pressure, maybe not. Or some retire. Or some take jobs elsewhere. You're going to see that a hell of a lot. Some of these prominent coaches you see at their current positions now are not going to be there when season ends. They're going to be coaching at the start of the 2022 campaign somewhere else. But right now, the week before Thanksgiving, here's what's gone down in college football. USC sent Clay Helton out the door. Some people feel it was 2 years too late, but nonetheless, he was sent packing. Don't weep for me, Argentina, though, because he's still a part of this coaching carousel. He saw the high and the low and the high, I should say, in that case. He's seen both sides of that coin. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. LSU, less than 24 months after this man was named Coach of the Year, had a 14-0 campaign, won a national title, and had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, Ed Orgeron, given the boot by LSU. Gary Patterson at TCU for 21 years has been the standard flag bearer for that program. He took over a program in Fort Worth that was an afterthought in the Western Athletic Conference, which, by the way, in terms of football, has been dormant since 2012. And all Gary Patterson did is lead them to prominent bowl games on a regular basis. When I say prominent, I'm not talking one of these bowl games that will take any 6-6 team that says yes. We're not talking the 10,000 flushes toilet bowl or the Blue Chew lick my ball sack bowl. We're talking trips to the Rose Bowl where they won, beat J.J. Watt's Wisconsin team. We're talking the Fiesta Bowl. We're talking the Peach Bowl, the Holiday Bowl. He was a perennial bowl participant, his teams were. And look at the dudes he sent to the pros. Yet, what have you done for me lately? Not even 3/4 of the way through the 2021 campaign, TCU basically told Gary Patterson, it's not you, it's us. Things didn't fare much better for one of his pupils, Justin Fuente. Went into Blacksburg as Frank Beamer's replacement. People had high hopes for him. Well, those high hopes, after year one, went pretty down south quick, and he was fired. Texas Tech, their head coach, given a boot. Matt Wells, out. They've already made a replacement. We'll talk about that momentarily. Washington State. Between the two of them, I don't think they coached 30 games combined at Washington and Washington State. Nick Rolovich and Jimmy Lake. Less than 2 full seasons, both given the axe. And I'm not going to come on here and debate right, wrong, merry, so. That's not the purpose of this video. You know why they were fired. You make your mind up on what side of the coin you're on, whether they were right or wrong. That's your call to make. I'm not going to make it here, because that's not what this video is about. Point is, those jobs are available. Even some of the smaller schools, UMass, UConn, who filled their coaching vacancy recently, Akron, Georgia Southern. I'm sure there's a school or two I'm leaving out of here. For some reason, I think I am. And if I left your school out, I apologize profusely. It's not personal. But that's just what's happened so far. As I said, a couple of these schools have already filled their vacancies. They went through the cycle. Texas Tech. Matt Wells couldn't replicate what he did at Utah State in Lubbock less than 3 years in, with a winning record, by the way, this year. They told him, hey, it's not enough. Hit the bricks. Replacing him is Joey McGuire. and assistant on Baylor staff, an assistant under Dave Aranda in Waco. Joey McGuire, never been a head coach on the college level, but you look at his credentials in the high school ranks in the state of Texas, he's held in very high esteem. And I know people will sit there and tell me there's a big difference between high school and college. I know, guys. Trust me, I'm well aware. But this guy, I will tell you right now, will land some of the big recruits out of the Lone Star State. He will lure them in just based off his credentials alone. So things are about to get pretty interesting in Lubbock. Whether or not he becomes the next Gus Malzahn or he becomes the next Tony Sanchez or Todd Dodge, I don't know. But I do know one thing. He will, like I said, make things interesting in terms of the recruiting battles in the state of Texas. UConn, Jim Mora, rather interesting hire, rather surprising one, and not in a bad way. I'm pleasantly surprised with what UConn did, because let me tell you, when they basically kicked Randy Edsall out the door after a disastrous second tenure there, right move to make. You know, you can't go home again sometimes, and sometimes you can never recapture the same lightning in the bottle. But when he was let go, or retired, I guess you could call it, my expectations on who they were going to get was pretty low. I was expecting maybe an FCS coach, maybe a retreat of some sorts, and I'm not talking a Tom Herman or a Joe Moorhead, even though they had been mentioned. You know, I'm talking, God, I don't know, a Brad Lambert. Or maybe a coordinator that's not getting the buzz but has some potential. That's what I was expecting. When they announced the other day that they were hiring Jim Mora, I was floored. I mean, Jim Mora, yes, I know things got rather stagnant at the end of his UCLA run. Things got rather stagnant, and they moved on. But you look at his track record in Westwood, not bad, man. He's doing a hell of a lot better than Chip Kelly is. He did a lot better there than Rick Neuheisel, one of the better coaches they've had since Terry Donahue. Actually did fairly well in the NFL, too. I mean, I think he'll do fine in UConn. Now, when I say fine, look, UConn's got a ceiling of what they're going to do, okay? I think Jim Mora can reach that ceiling, and I think their ceiling is 8, maybe 9 wins. I realize USC, LSU, Texas, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Florida. Look, you get my point of view. At those schools, 8 or 9 wins probably get you shit bagged. 8 or 9 wins a year at UConn gets a fucking statue built in downtown stores. Gets the fucking stadium named after you. And I think Moore is capable of doing that. I think he'll come in and rebuild this roster. I think he'll work some of the transfer portal. And again, he's not poaching dudes from Alabama. All right, he's not poaching dudes from Oklahoma or anybody like that. But I could see him working the transfer portal and getting some respectable talent. With the mere promise, you can come in and start right away, because that program's a fucking mess. I think he could land some recruits that way, out of the New York City area, out of the Boston area. Very solid hiring. Speaking of solid hirings, this coaching carousel started with Clay Helton, and he remained part of it. He saw the lowest of lows, but he also saw the highest of highs. Hired by Georgia Southern. I think that's a perfect fit. I think it's a perfect fit for Helton. I think it's a perfect fit for Georgia Southern. I think he very much can do at Georgia Southern what Jamie Chadwell's doing at Coastal Carolina. I think 9-10 wins a year at Georgia Southern keeps him in pretty good company. Keeps him gainfully employed. And this guy has a lot of ties to the state of Georgia. A lot of deep South ties. He's a Southern boy. And he will be able to walk in to a lot of houses for the second, third tier schools and say, you know what? I'm a Rose Bowl winning coach. I coached a quarterback who wound up being a top 3 pick. Probably another one in there on the ranks that maybe, wound up being a first rounder, Calvin Slovis. I had a fairly good run in LA. I think he'll do fine there. I think he'll do more than fine. But beyond that, what's next? Who's some of the coaches that could be changing places? Who's some of the schools that could be making changes? Got to start right at the top, man. Florida. Talk about a drastic shift. 12 months ago, Dan Mullen was coveted by Texas, was at least talked to. Dan Mullen was getting some buzz as possibly taking the jump to the NFL. Nobody in Gainesville wanted Mullen to go. Now, they can't wait to push his ass out the door fast enough. After this team struggled to beat Stanford, and I'm not talking Stanford, I'm talking Samford, whatever. I'll be shocked if Mullen doesn't get fired. I will. And I know it's a deep coaching carousel. They're going to be going up against LSU. They're going to be going up against USC. Who knows what the fuck else is going to open between now and then? They're going up against Virginia Tech. There's only so many mouths to feed and not enough fish to feed them with. But Florida's an elite program. They can swim in the deep waters. They can go fishing big. They can shoot for the big buck and land it. So don't be surprised if that happens. Miami. Look, I know Manny Diaz lives, eats, and breathes Miami. I know he is basically one step up from Southern Florida royalty, considering who his old man is. I know he had the player chain, and it looked like that, at least on defense under Mark Richt, that there was some legitimate swagger coming back to the U. It hasn't worked, man. It hasn't worked as a head coach. Some people are better off being dishwashers than they are chefs. And who knows, man? Maybe Manny Diaz jumped too soon. Maybe Manny Diaz should have stayed at Temple and cut his teeth for 3 or 4 years before making that jump to the U or to a program like that. Maybe it was too much too soon. What I do know is it's not working out. I mean, the Florida State game, the ending of it, just not good. Some of the other losses he suffered since taking over at the U, not good. Losing to Florida International, there's a program I forgot they got a coaching change forthcoming. Butch Davis stepped away, but losing to Florida International, inexcusable. Going in and getting just completely bitch slapped by Louisiana Tech in a game where their junior varsity, their band would have probably played with more heart than they did. Inexcusable. Getting blown out. Now, granted, I know that Michigan State blowout, that Alabama blowout certainly is not a bad thing on paper, and Michigan State looks a hell of a lot better now than it did then. But not excusable, man. This is a team that the fan base expects them at least to play competitive, and they haven't. So, I think Diaz is done. I think he's on his way out. Sark? No. Does he go into next year, his sophomore year as head coach of the Longhorns, on the hottest of hot seat? Absolutely. But I don't think they're giving Sark that $20 million buyout. Not when they're paying Tom Herman $15 to sit his ass at home or, be whatever the fuck he is with the Chicago Bears. But they could. Then we're just talking about coaches that are possibly getting fired. Those that are jumping ship. I mean, look, USC. Dave Aranda, very real possibility there, guys. Very real. Got deep ties to Southern California. We also know his ties to LSU. That's a possibility. Mel Tucker, I know he's sitting on a monster contract from Michigan State. 10 years, $95 million. Yet, that's not a new contract. That's not something that was just, dropped down on the desk here, 24 hours ago. That offer has apparently been lingering for a while now. The fact that Mel Tucker hasn't accepted it leads me to really believe he's holding out hope for that LSU job. And I think he could wind up getting the LSU job before it's all said and done. I mean, they're going to keep swinging for the Jimbo Fisher fence. Jimbo can say 1,000,000 times he's not taking a job. No matter what, though, as many times as he says he's not leaving Texas A&M, and as convincing as he's been, people will not let that shit go. There's rumors floating around that Lincoln Riley could be floated an offer. But I don't see him leaving Oklahoma either. I mean, you can argue what's the better job, LSU, Oklahoma. I mean, flip a coin. Probably has more resources at LSU, but again, flip a coin. It's not like Oklahoma's a fucking, it's not like Oklahoma's a fucking low-level fucking FBS school, okay? We're not talking, whatever. We're not talking Rice. So flip a coin. I think Mel Tucker's very realistic, and that's why I don't think he signed that contract yet. I think he is holding out hope that LSU, even if they don't meet dollar for dollar, I think he's holding out hope that LSU will come knocking and make him that offer. And I think he still thinks he's got a very viable chance at it. James Franklin. It's a name that really has generated a lot of talk. He's talked about at USC, he was talked about at LSU. Any prominent opening, his name's being floated out there. And if Florida becomes open, I guarantee you his name will be floated for that too. The question is, do you judge James Franklin and his entire body of work off of one ho-hum year? Things aren't going well for him this year in Happy Valley. The question is, does he want to stay? Does he want to make the jump? Right now, I'll tell you this, there's a lot of Penn State people, a lot of Penn State faithful that would pack Franklin's fucking U-Haul for him if it meant him going. Why, I don't know. I mean, the grass isn't always greener, guys. It really ain't. But Franklin still could be in play for USC. I don't think he's much in play for LSU anymore. I think his name has dropped down that list considerably this season. Miami, interesting name to pay attention to here. Lane Kiffin. And I know people will argue left and right. Lateral move, perhaps. A couple things to pay attention to here. Why Kiffin could take the Miami job. Why I think he's a very realistic possibility. Number one, he loved South Florida. He still does. Got roots down there. He's got established down there for his time at Florida Atlantic. And he never hid the fact, like I said, he loved every second of it down there. Can't say the same about Mississippi. I don't think he's disenchanted with the job itself, but he's let it be well known. He has not hid the fact that he does not like living in Mississippi. And you got to be a certain kind, man. Lane Kiffin is Hollywood. Lane Kiffin is South Beach. Lane Kiffin is Manhattan. And I'm not talking Kansas. Lane Kiffin isn't Oxford. I think if Miami comes knocking, he's going to take it. I know if LSU comes knocking, he'll run to Baton Rouge for that job. I think he'd do the same for Miami, though. Because, like I said, I don't think he likes living in Mississippi. In fact, he's very blunt that he doesn't. Matt Corral's headed out the door, and I think Lane may think he's reached his peak of what he's going to do at Ole Miss. When Matt Corral's gone, what's things going to be like there? Miami, but the road to the top, a hell of a lot less bumpy in the ACC than it is in the SEC, and that's without Oklahoma and Texas coming on board. Right now, it's a fucking nightmare to the top because you still got Alabama with Saban. You still got Florida, turn shit around. You got Georgia, Texas A&M. Hell, in your own state, you got Mississippi State. I mean, it's a long road to the top in the SEC. The road not so long in the ACC. In fact, right now, I'm going to say this straight up. Lane Kiffin could have Miami competing for an ACC title as soon as next year. Keep that in mind. Some interesting talks about Washington. The name Brian Harsin floated out there. Could be interested. Some grumblings that he's not liking the inner workings of the SEC. And it makes sense. Brian Harsin, minus a couple of years at Texas as an offensive coordinator, this guy is rooted in the Pacific Northwest. Boise to Seattle, hop, skip, and a jump away. That's his world, that Pacific Northwest. And we all know his affiliation with Chris Peterson. Well documented. Chris Peterson still has a lot of pull at Washington, still works for that athletic department. So in that avenue, it makes a ton of sense. Would he won and done Auburn? I don't know. Depends upon how homesick he is. But I will tell you one thing that's holding it back, and that is the issue with the COVID vaccine. And again, I said I'm not going to turn this into a political fucking rant, and I'm not. I'm not going to turn this political. But He has yet to disclose his vac status. It has to by the end of the year. I believe December 13th or some. I don't know the exact, but he's got a deadline to basically shit or get off the pot. That's not going to go away in Washington. Ask Nick Rolovich. So if he's anti-vax, and again, I don't give a fuck. If you are, you are. You're not, you're not. Whatever. That's not what this video is about. But if he's anti-vax, he ain't going to Washington. Straight up, he ain't going to Washington. That's about it for now, though. It's crazy, man. The whole college football landscape is just changing on a daily basis. And it starts with the coaching ranks. But look all around, man. You got NIL. You got the transfer portal is more used than ever before. I mean, 5-star talents that you see starting at one place and ending at the same school, it's not like it used to be, man. Salaries are going up. Mel fucking Tucker, who has been a head coach for 3 years, has got a contract worth almost $100 million sitting on his desk waiting to be signed by Michigan State. It's insane. Don't even get me started on the realignment, man. I've done videos about that. Since Texas and Oklahoma announced their intent to leave the Big 12, it's been a fucking roller coaster, man. You've seen more departures and arrivals in your local fucking airport. And the craziness it starts and stops at the coaching carousel. And it's only going to get crazier from here. Happy Thanksgiving.